Some leaders leave footprints, others leave libraries. You're tuning into the Authors on Mission podcast, where industry giants become literacy legends. In every episode, we talk with authors who turn their brilliance into books that transform lives. I'm Danielle Hutchinson, your host and Chief Creative Officer at Authors on Mission. Welcome to your authorship experience. Hello and welcome to Authors on Mission podcast, the podcast committed to delving into top-tier insights and strategies employed by established experts in their respective domains to achieve success while writing a book about it. I'm your host, Danielle Hutchinson, and today I'm thrilled to welcome Laury A. Egan, a remarkable author of 15 novels spanning literary fiction, suspense, comedy, and romance. Today we're going to be discussing two of her newest releases, Fairhaven and Contrary, Stories and Apply. So I'm very excited to dive into both of those. Without any further ado, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be on.
Yeah, it's a pleasure, and I'm really excited because you really are a versatile writer. You've written across numerous genres throughout your career. So I think it's going to be really cool to talk about how you kind of dabble in multiple domains. It's going to be really an interesting conversation. But the first thing I always do like to start off with is to allow the audience to get to know you a little bit. So if you don't mind sharing a little bit more about your background and also, what led you into the writing world?
Well, my first passion was writing. In fact, the first thing I ever wrote was age 7, a poem that I wrote in the bathtub. I yelled for my mother and said, "Bring me a paper and pencil." And she did, thinking I was completely crazy. And I wrote 4 stanzas out. So my first novel I wrote when I was between 12 and 13. And then I wrote some short stories. But when I decided to go and apply for colleges, I think I chickened out on myself a little bit. And though I was accepted at Bennington and Bard in creative writing, I went to Carnegie Mellon and pursued the visual arts, which I also have some background in. I've been a book designer for many years at Princeton University Press, and then freelance for about 20-some publishers. So I have a very strong grounding in design, typography, and publishing. So that sort of was a very good learning experience. I work with really brilliant editors, and I think I really learned a huge amount from my experience in the publishing world. I'm also a fine arts photographer. I teach, and I also use some of the photos that I've taken on some of my book covers, and needless to say, as a book designer, I have designed a number of my covers too. So I'm unusual in the sense not only do I write in a lot of different genres, as you pointed out, but also my background is both in the visual and and writing. So I'm sort of different that way, I guess.
Yeah, well, that's actually a unique skill. Many authors have to seek outside help for their cover design, for their book layouts, but you kind of have that all in one package, which is really cool. I guess the question would be, which came first, the chicken or the egg, or the book or the cover, right? Were you ever inspired by a certain design and then wrote a book on that?
I think a little bit depended on either what I was trying to convey in the novel or the book, or the setting. My first book, Jenny Kidd, was set in Venice, and we're going to do a revised edition of that in October. But very much I was influenced initially by Patricia Highsmith, who just loves her sociopaths. And I was always very interested in psychology, so a lot of my books fall into the psychological suspense genre. So the covers sort of come along depending. Sometimes they're later than I've written the book afterwards, and sometimes I've got a really good photograph or a visual image that I know I want to capture or find, and that sort of, as the book progresses in the writing stages, then I get a little clearer on what I want to emphasize in terms of an illustration.
Understood. Well, again, very cool that you're able to dabble and kind of go back and forth between multiple talents there. Really amazing that you're able to do that. I'm wondering, is there a certain thing that makes you prefer one genre over another? I'm wondering if they're balanced in your eyes, or if you have a favorite out of all the ones you've written.
I don't have
No.
I don't know. I mean, it's like, you have 15 children. Who's your favorite? I don't know. I think Well, the new book, Fairhaven, was actually my first book that I started in 1985, believe it or not, when I first got an IBM computer and a printer. And then I worked on it, and then I put it aside, and then got busy with my freelance business. And I worked on it a couple of times over many years. And then just recently, my London publisher took all of my manuscripts, everything I had, and cleaned my desk off. So I thought, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? So Fairhaven, ultimately, I said, okay, let's just buckle down and see if you can fix this mess. And it's a big book and it's complicated, but it's fun. So I would say that right now, that's one of my favorites. There are a few others in the past I really like. Once Upon an Island, which is set on St. Croix, was very nostalgic for me. And then I've written books on Venice, as I said, which I've been to many times, and also Greece, which is a country I love and I've been to also quite a bit. So setting it has been often why I start a book, but not always. Sometimes it's oh, if this happened, what would occur next kind of problem in my head. Or maybe it's a character. I don't know. I've had some very strange sort of channeling experiences with characters where they just come into my head and they start talking to me, and they won't stop until I go to the computer, and out they come. And I've had at least 2 or 3 characters do that to me. So that's another reason I start a book.
Well, I love that. It's really cool that you kind of start a book based on every different type of domain, from characters to setting to what just inspires you in general. So yeah, that's great that you do that. And just as a side note, I do love that you said it in Venice and Greece. Via email, I mentioned that I've been there to beautiful locations. There's no surprise that you're inspired by being there. I am certainly also. There's nothing like looking at all of those mountains and hills in Greece or the canals in Venice. It's beautiful. So I'm wondering, have you ever done your writing on location, or is it mainly based on your memories and experiences?
Mostly my memories and experiences, and as a photographer, I've also been really aided by the fact that I take a lot of photographs.
Yes.
So between research and memories and looking things up online and maps and various things, I usually can pretty much pull up a place. And that's fun. It's like going back and doing the trip all over again.
Right, exactly. And that's something I love too. And sometimes you might even pick up on something in a photograph they didn't notice at the time, or, what have you. So I love that you're able to draw upon that. So segueing a little bit into some of your books then, for example, first off, I think we should discuss Fairhaven a little bit, because it's, one of these most upcoming and recent books that you're writing about. What made you go into murder mystery, for example, especially for this particular story? Was there a certain event that inspired you for this?
Well, I as I said, when I started this way back, I was reading all of Patricia Highsmith's books. So I think the suspense, well, this really isn't suspense. It's more of a character-driven murder mystery. And I likened it to a little bit to some of the BBC-style murder mysteries like Midsummer Murders, where a small, bucolic little town that looks very lovely and innocent on its surface actually has something horrible happen, and all the people that are in the town, or many of the people, the residents, wind up being involved in this murder. So in many ways, this was inspired by Highsmith, although it's not as psychologically dark as Jenny Kidd is, or a couple of my other novels that are probably a little more in the psychological suspense line. But Fairhaven is also a New Jersey town, and it's very close by me. I love the idea of the irony of the name of the town with a murder in it. Fairhaven being sort of the opposite of what one would expect to be a town where there's a death. And I actually attended Rumson Fairhaven Regional High School, so I am very familiar with the area and was living in the town, adjacent. So Fairhaven was just a serendipitous, it was just a great fit for me way back. Yeah.
Great, I love that. And, it's really cool because the characters, for example, from what I did read of your book, they do have some complex and really intertwined relationships too, which is really cool to think about. So it's really clear that you think a lot about your characters, about how they'll interact with each other. How do you develop this web of connections, and which characters went through lots of evolution during your writing process? I'm sure it's just a lot of planning, right?
Yeah, I really am fascinated by the psychology of people, and so I think that comes through. If there's any unifying factor in my work, I would say that attention to psychology and how people feel and think and react, backstories of the characters. That's really important to me. In this particular novel, one of the people that I really enjoyed writing was the local sheriff, Ray Mackey, who is a character. I mean, he's overweight, he's sort of blustery, and he's a character. And his car is a mess, but he's a likable guy. And the other main character that I really enjoyed writing is Chris Clark, who is a photographer. So I wrote about something I knew about. She is called on to do the forensic crime scene photographs, and she also knows the woman, Sally Ann Schaefer, who was murdered. Not well, but did know her. So she is involved with a woman, and the woman was involved with Sally Ann Schaefer at some point. So there are all these little interconnected relationships, and then there are all kinds of other things. It's chock full of fun. I mean, it's a hotbed of intrigue, shall we say.
Yeah, yeah. And, I think the more complex you make it and the more you do develop those characters, it's what really gets the reader interested and keeps them wanting to read on and figure out, who was the killer, what is the mystery, all of that. Do you find it challenging in any way to craft such a mystery to keep the readers engaged and to keep it a mystery, I guess, to keep the secrets from the readers? Whenever I'm writing a mystery, I find it challenging without, giving too much away, finding that perfect balance.
It is difficult, and this book was the hardest of all the ones I have done that have involved any kind of a mystery element, because I had so many characters and I had to make sure that each one did not have an alibi and could have been the killer or could have been in the right place to do it. And so this meant, pages and pages of writing calendars, and oh my God, it was tough. But reports are very good from the readers that I have heard from so far, and nobody has guessed what the identity of the killer is, except at the very end when they should have. So that always makes me very happy when I manage to fool people.
Yeah, of course. It must be feels great at the very end after working so hard to make those characters, make that plot, really craft it together, to know that it does come together really well. Kind of transitioning on from that book then, there is another recent book that you came out with, which I think is very important for us to touch upon also, Contrary, Stories and a Play. I was looking through that one as well, and for everybody listening, this book does explore a wide range of themes, social dilemmas, disability, dementia. So I'm wondering, what guided your selection of stories for this collection?
Well, unlike my first collection, I did have in that one some linkage, but this one really no. I had been writing, short stories in between novels and things like that, and, getting them published in literary journals. So of the 21 stories in this book, the majority have been published in literary journals first. So I used, what I thought were the best stories I had written in between, and that was really the criteria. So it is a really mixed bag, but I think overall I think there, you sort of get to feel my voice a little bit, and it's a great way of dipping into my work, my longer work, because there are bits and pieces of stories that you can identify with novels, not by theme or by plot, but just because of the voice or the style, the genre.
Right, understood. So I guess that's more so Whatever resonated with you, basically, is how
Yeah,
you.
that's pretty much it. And then, it was really difficult to put them in any order because it was tricky because they really range from the first story, Contrary, which is about a young girl whose mother is a very social, attractive woman, and she wants her daughter to look like she does and wear shoes that the daughter doesn't want to wear. So it's a little vignette, but I think, there are some young kids in here, some of whom are not so wonderfully nice, but some of them are, really relatable characters. And then you go all the way to the very end of the novel, the collection, which is Reaching for the Moon, about somebody dying. And that was written about a year and a half ago. And I really wanted to sort of end on that ethereal kind of note, except for the play, which is, follows it.
Yeah, and I'd love to discuss the play in more detail also. But before we segue into that, kind of branching off of my last question, I was looking at some of the reviews for the books, and I think one of them came up with a really good way to summarize why you chose this collection. And it was kind of, you highlight the humanity common to us all. So I'm wondering, is there a certain message that you hope readers do take away from this collection?
I don't tend to think in terms of message.
No.
I'm not a message writer if I did write something that comes across as a message, it's sort of inadvertent or just part of my general philosophy. I would say that would be the best way I can answer that. It's not probably a satisfying answer, but
No, I understand completely. Sometimes, again, it's more so what the stories resonate with you. You enjoy writing them. It's a good story to tell. It doesn't always have to have a message. And maybe I should kind of kick myself even asking that because, one rule of writing is, it doesn't always have to have a double meaning. It might just be straightforward, a fun read, and very powerful too. But I see what you mean by that. So
yeah, I think the only one thing that might be considered a small theme, not a pervasive one, is that when small children or younger children are abused emotionally or in any other fashion, as they get older, they carry those wounds with them, and then they often act out in many ways very similar to their abuser. So there are a couple of stories in there where the children, have had a very difficult childhood, and so that's one thing. And then I think to sort of deal with things like the dementia issue, there are at least two dementia stories in this of the 21, and I think that's an important kind of thing to deal with a little kindness and humor, both, because there is something sort of funny about some of the experiences people have with dementia, and others it's very tragic.
yeah, no, and of course, it's a very tragic thing to even discuss and to think about, but I guess that's what makes the stories powerful, right? Is when you're able to write about that tragedy, but also convey it in a way that everybody relates to and they can learn from, I guess, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So segueing a little bit into the writing process itself, which everybody listening today, we know that Laury has a wide range of writing spanning from so many different genres, including plays. So I guess one thing I'm curious about is, what about your revision process? How does that work for you? How do you know when a story is truly finished?
Well, I'm one of those rare authors. In fact, I don't think I know anybody else as bad as I am.
Oh,
For a novel, I will often go through between 25 and 40 passes
wow.
before I submit. And I would probably guess not so many for a short story because, the arc is simpler. There's a lot less to keep track of, in terms of the plot. But
Yeah.
I go through a lot of revisions because I'm really fussy. And some of them are just very minor, looking for repetitive words or awkward sentences or things like that. But I am really a stickler. In fact, my publisher, I just spoke with him yesterday via Zoom, and he was telling me that the book coming out in October, he and his father, who's the editor, got crazy because they could only find 11 errors in 250 manuscript pages of mine. And Most of those were things where I had used a British spelling, believe it or not, rather than a US spelling. So they corrected me to the US spelling, so it wasn't even 11 mistakes. So I am pretty careful. And that's because of my background in publishing. I understand how important it is to get it right.
Understood. Yeah, and it's funny that lots of people go through all different types of revisions. I don't think you're necessarily, too crazy, as you would put it, for going through that many, because as a writer, your book is like your child. You want to make sure that everything is perfect, that you're using the correct words, that there's no errors, and even the smallest period, right? So that's why you need to keep going through it, and to ensure that it's clear, that it's not repetitive, that it's structured well, that it's engaging. So kudos to you. The more attention you put into your work, the better the quality, and it shows. So.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I'm not saying that they're free of mistakes. And sometimes it's formatting, a formatting problem, but sometimes it's me. So, I mean, we all make mistakes, but I really do try my hardest to avoid them.
Yeah, of course. But there's always some stuff to catch or refine or improve upon, regardless of whether it's writing or anything else in life it could be applied to also. So yeah, kind of moving on from that, Laury, you have these 2 amazing books out now. I'm wondering what else might be on the horizon for you?
Well, my first publisher and my first book, Jenny Kidd, the publisher went out of business last September. So my current publisher grabbed it right away, and then I did a revision because it was a long time in between, and I've gotten a little better at certain things. So that's going to be coming out, I believe, October 18th from Spectrum Books, and it's Jenny Kidd, set in Venice. And that is very much in the Patricia Highsmith mold. I mean, if you saw the movie Saltburn that came out in 2023, they've got some of the similar themes of that strange novel. So this is rather, I guess, erotic and exotic both.
Mm-hmm.
I was, my ears turned a little red when I was rereading it for the first
really?
time in how many years. So, but I think it's a good story. It's about a young woman who is a artist, and she goes to Venice to create a portfolio and get free from the tentacles of her controlling father. And there she goes. She's invited to a mass ball in a palazzo, and she meets a countess. And therein lies the tale. Then she becomes completely enmeshed with this brother and sister team in this beautiful, 4-floored palazzo off of near the Rialto Bridge.
Sounds really beautiful, and especially the location itself, as you mentioned before, that's, one drawing factor of it, not to mention the scandal of it, I guess you could say. So really cool. That's something we could all, be excited for. Well, I'm wondering, do you happen to have a copy of one of these more recent books with you today to show the audience?
Yes, I do. I have both of them here.
Oh, perfect.
I have Jenny Kidd because that cover is awful. The new one is great. I can send you a thing of it. Yeah, can you see these? Contrary is my design and one of my photographic students' images.
Okay.
Fairhaven is another one of my students. My London publisher wanted to have a drone shot, so I called him up and said, okay, get your drone out. And he took a photograph of Fairhaven from up above, and this is one of the 2 rivers, so yeah.
Absolutely gorgeous. And those are the types of covers that really draw people in, make them curious to know what is behind the cover, and it's really great, again, that you're able to combine all of your abilities in that way for that piece of work. So yeah, everybody, if you're listening today and you're interested in these books, please, please, please go ahead and check them out. Laury, where can we find more information about you? Where can we get in touch and find these books and stay up to date with the upcoming releases?
Okay, well, all my books except for my poetry titles are available on Amazon in both paperback and Kindle or ebook formats. And Contrary is going to be published May 17th, but it's on Amazon right now. My website is my name, Laury, Laury, Egan.com. And there's information about all my books there, and some of my photography too as well, and some of my poetry, because I have 4 volumes of poetry too that I've written.
Amazing. So we're going to put the links to all of that in the description box of this podcast today. So when we're finished, everybody, please go ahead and click on it, check it out. find out more, because Laury really does have a huge array of different types of books that I think anybody could find one that resonates with them. So, Laury, I'm wondering, do you have any bits of advice to offer to our authors who are listening here today? They're either aspiring writers wanting to follow in your footsteps, or they're established and they just want a little bit of, something to get them going. What might come to the top of your mind in terms of advice?
I think Fairhaven is a good lesson, was for me too, because this was something I started a long time ago and then put aside. And I think having the patience, that's a very important part of being a writer, is being patient and really just doing it, to, paraphrase the old expression. I think sitting in the chair every day working is what really creates a writer. It's not just ideating about something, it's really doing it. And then please, try to see if you can revise and revise and revise, learn how to use commas, learn how to, do punctuation properly, get a copy of Chicago Manual of Style and follow it. These are all important things, but mainly it's just sitting in the chair and doing it.
Right. It's about practice, right? Practice does make perfect. Whatever it is you might be trying your hand at, maybe it's writing, maybe it's some other talent skill. It takes failure and doing it over and over. And that revision process, like you said, all of that really just makes you the better writer that you deserve to be. So thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah, well, thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you and, about these various books. And I think, that's the other thing is, a lot of people follow, a direct line, and they always write sort of the same book or the same genre, and then they get a really good, strong readership because of that. But I tend to write the book that needs to be written in my head at the time. And so I think both are perfectly valid, but I think each writer will have to decide for his or herself which way they want to go with that.
Right, exactly. And at the end of the day, it is the writer's choice, right? You can talk to as many beta readers or editors or publishers. And well, if you're self-publishing, at least, it's your decision at the end of the day. So that makes a lot of sense, that you need to keep that in mind as you go. But thank you so much for sharing all of this with us. It's been a pleasure to talk a lot about your books. Those are only 2 of the many books that you have out there. So everybody listening, you click on those links, you'll find out more about all the others as well. So yeah, thanks again for joining us on this show. Everybody, that does bring us to the end of today's episode with the incredible Laury A. Egan. Laury, it's been amazing talking to you. Thanks for sharing your insights on writing, your characters, and all the above. It's been a pleasure.
Well, thank you, Danielle. It's been a lot of fun. Great questions.
Of course. And to our listeners, remember that Authors on Mission is here to empower you with the knowledge and self-assurance needed to become an expert in your own right. So again, find Fairhaven and Contrary stories and a play at the links. Until next time, keep writing, keep learning, and stay on your mission. We'll see you next time. This is Danielle Hutchinson reminding you that somewhere, someone needs the book that only you can write. Visit authorsonmission.com to start your legacy. Until next time, keep leading, keep inspiring, and keep thinking in chapters. Have a great day.